Cool. So I did invite my colleague Erica as well. I don't think she's here yet, but I'm happy to just go through this. And when she does come, we can kind of adjust the conversation. And, she's done some benchmarking as well, so she can highlight some of her experiences. But this presentation really just serves as like a broad overview. You did speak to how you've already read the handbook, so that covers the presentation contents in a lot more detail. But this is something that our team put together recently just to kind of serve as a high-level overview, like I said. So we're going to start off talking about what is usability benchmarking. And hi, Erica.
Hi.
So usability benchmarking is a research program, not just like a single study. So this is something, and you kind of saw this in the handbook. That handbook page was created last year by one of our colleagues, Ben LeDuc-Mills. So usability benchmarking really looks at the current product in production, aka GitLab, and we're trying to assess the product performance by looking at the usability components of it. And this consists of looking at the same set of methods, such as different types of tasks that users might perform within GitLab, and then kind of assessing that along consistent metrics, like how long it takes them to complete those tasks. Are they successful with those tasks? How do they rate like the perceived usability of those tasks? We can make comparisons between usability benchmarking studies from one point in time to another to see how things have changed or how things have improved. So for example, we did a release benchmarking study in like Q3 of last year, and we identified a number of different usability improvements. After we make those improvements, we could do another usability benchmarking study to assess how much that has improved across the different tasks that we tested users with. So you may have heard about usability benchmarking studies, and you also may have heard about just usability studies. So just to clarify the difference between those two, usability studies, I'll start on the left-hand side, usually just looks at a specific part of a particular workflow or task. We'll mainly look at like mock-ups for designs and things that haven't been released to the actual customer yet. So we're wanting to get a little bit ahead of the game and get some upfront feedback from just a couple of participants. So we typically use smaller sample sizes for those. It's more of a conversation, so we get a lot more qualitative feedback from participants. And then because these are usually less time to set up and we don't have to recruit as many participants, this can take anywhere from a couple weeks to a month from start to finish. And then in terms of our methods, each study is fairly independent from one another because the research questions will really differ from study to study. And then contrasting that against usability benchmarking studies, we're looking at kind of entire workflows within a stage. So release, monitor, verify, package. We're looking at what are a bunch of like common tasks that users could or actually are performing within those stages, and looking at those workflows from start to finish. Those typically involve larger sample sizes of about 20 participants. And then we're getting more quantitative data. So not having as much of a conversation, but actually giving participants a task and then measuring how they perform said tasks. The time commitment's usually about a quarter to complete from start to finish. And then, like I said before on the previous slide, we look at performance across time. So we can do this usability study or usability benchmarking study for a particular stage group or stage, and then look at some point in the future after some enhancements have been made to see how that changes has happened. We also want to talk about why usability benchmarking studies are important. So they measure the usability performance of our application. We also can find ways to improve the usability of the product. So we see, as we test certain tasks and scenarios with those 20 users, we identify certain themes like, okay, they're all trying to click on the same button or go to the same place, and that's the wrong area, or they're performing this task in a way that we didn't really expect them to. So we get a lot of that feedback just by seeing that happen over and over again. And then we're able to track our progress over time, as I've spoken to before. And then this also connects to our system usability scores at the end of the day, where we measure the overall system of GitLab and get feedback every quarter about how it's doing. So by making improvements through usability benchmarking studies, we can conceivably improve the overall SUS scores. So with that, I'll hand it over to Erica.
Yeah, this is just a quick overview of our product development flow, and kind of a note to say that most of what you see us doing research on, like us and the designers and the product managers, yay, everyone does research. It's kind of in those two boxes, whereas the benchmark study is the polished version, very systematic, what we've shipped improvements. And then the next slide is just some more details on specifically what benchmarking looks like at GitLab. So every company will benchmark in different ways, although what we've chosen to do is pretty standard. So that's just like a list of the metrics. So looking at success on each task, we have to define that a priori, the time it takes to complete each task, the customer effort, which is a rating, and then a few quick questions that relate to kind of the SUS scores. And traditionally, like at other companies where I've done this, we have to like spend a lot of time with PMs thinking about the goals for our products. And that can take like months, but luckily we have our jobs to be done statements already articulated. And so we can kind of use that as a jumping off point. And as Will said, maybe that we've completed so far benchmarks and create, release, secure, plan is in process, and then verify is sprinting. There's the epic. That would be me doing that stuff. And the next slide kind of gives you this global overview of what the results look like for Create. And so what's really nice about this is that you kind of get this grand vision, right? So you can get an overall score, but then like looking at those workflows, you can quickly focus on, oh, protect branch. We need to focus there. And so that can kind of help us to prioritize all of the kind of actionable insights and issues that will come out of this, right? And that can be like, okay, so we can, as a team, decide that this poor workflow gets the most attention right now. And that's how we can use this to get a more global sense and move forward as a team, kind of holistically, which I think we're missing a little bit right now. So we're like coming in, we're coming in to help. Yes. So that's hopefully good news. And then the next one is like a more detailed drill down into like a specific task, right? So like that is the drill down into one of those little task boxes that we saw on the previous slide. And you can see like the overall score on that task, and then notes and quotes and pain points. And that's a little bit more of the qualitative data here, although this is like a quantitative endeavor. Like all of those scores come from quant data, but it still has this kind of rich way of filling out the reasons behind those pain points and the scores. And then just kind of the next one is just kind of to just bring it home about wanting you to know, like, we do this stuff and you see those scores come out, hopefully. Hopefully those reports reach you, and then we try to triage that information, but it's not as systematic in terms of usability, and then thinking about what is the biggest, most acute pain point, like the red squares. And so we just want to kind of say that we want to do stuff across time, and we should see a relationship, but this will give us more actionable finding. And that's why we're digging into this research program, right? And what makes it a research program is that we'll do this over time systematically, versus a study that would be like a usability study, like Will said, is like more focused on the particular question and solution that you're validating at that time. And then now you're probably wondering, how can you do a benchmarking study? So the next slide is just telling you these are the basic steps there. So first we'll kind of do the project planning, and that's where verify, we're actually in the third step right now, but we'll kind of get the timeline and deliverables. Then it's important to identify like target participants, right? Like, who are we testing with? And that's important also because in terms of like the replicability of this stuff, we want to make sure that our time 1 sample is the same as our time 2 sample, so that we know that differences in scores aren't because of differences in our sample. So kind of in this next iteration, we're working on using a common screener. And we've kind of built in some monitor tasks there, kind of in anticipation of running these studies. And then we want to identify the tasks and workflows. So this is like, in a way, it's like a lot of work because we have to put up front and do a lot of thinking about the tasks and workflows. And then you can see there next, like the test environment. But it's worth it, and it's the right work to do, because later on, we'll just have a lighter lift comparatively of picking up and using, finding a similar sample using the same test environment, although it will be updated for the newest version. But things like the number of projects, the number of pipelines in that project will be the same. In many iterations, in my dream world, we would be using the same test environment across stages, but we have to like keep it scoped and make small steps. And then another place to kind of be, that we would hope you would kind of be invited to, are this pilot sessions. So that's a way you should be invited to give feedback on the tasks and workflows on all steps, but the pilot sessions are kind of really important places to sit in so you can give feedback on just how the tests are being implemented, if there's any changes to the test environment. And then the official sessions are more of like a just UXR will lean in and get those done systematically and quickly. And then UXR will kind of lead the analysis and report. And then we'll rear our heads and have like workshops and be generating actionable insights and kind of coming up with the next steps as a team based on those trends that we're seeing. Should be fun. Although I'm a research nerd, so it could be my bias.
No, this is great, and I'm sure I've definitely noticed the usability of the platform improve in the last like 18 months, for sure. So good work, folks.
Can I ask you a quick question on this, related to this part, I guess, is that when we identify an area that we're going to do a study on, because of the duration of the study, do we have to make a conscious effort to actually not do any iteration on that feature area? So like, say, like editing a file in the web IDE, is that something the team has to get together and say like, hey, we actually have to, like, anything we planned on doing, let's pause it just so we don't screw up the study? Or is that kind of like not really come up as a concern?
I think it will be encapsulated because we'll do it on the last release. So we'll kind of be coordinated and run it on the last, like our test environment will be on 15.
Oh, right.
Yep.
Okay. So you're not using GitLab.com, you're using an actual like isolated instance.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
But that's great. Way to think like a researcher. We would need to do that. Yeah, we would all make a commitment that we wouldn't make the change and then kind of watch that play out. But yeah, that's why we like try to run those sessions almost in a marathon format, right? Where you kind of like get it done. In part because you want to get those findings out, but also because the quicker you can do them in time controls for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, great
I have a
question.
question. So if you you went through the steps, which was great in the table, that the team will maybe participate in some of those steps. Can you kind of maybe just touch on where the team gets involved and maybe some of the things that might be helpful or the team should maybe think ahead about in terms of where they can get involved to help this process along?
Yeah, if you click on My Epic there, it has like this table for each step. And then I've like outlined like the first step is pretty product heavy. Do you see that? And then the next step is from everyone, which is identifying those tasks. And kind of what we need to do is, and you can click in and dig in if you would like, but for each of those workflows, we have like a comment with the start of the task, the end of the task. It has like a video that the designers are creating, just to be very transparent about what we're actually testing. And then we need feedback about that. Like, do you think that task should start earlier or later? And then most importantly, what are the implications for our test environment? So how many pipelines should we run? Exactly what error are we solving with the pipeline insights task? And that stuff. So then that step then determines what the test environment setup will look like. And that's our biggest blocker. So that, and then the recruit to find the participants are our biggest blocker. So it can take like 3 to 4 weeks of just kind of iterating and getting that, that environment set up, and that we need to use, that's eng heavy. We cannot do it without you. And so that's something to start thinking about in the planning stage. Is like, okay, well, when is eng going to be available to dedicate some sprint time on that? And I think that is the kind of the biggest barrier for getting the stage ready to do one of these. And then again, like in the pilot, to get that feedback before we commit and then lean in to the running the analysis. And then the last step, kind of digesting the findings, right? So we've seen this, and now what do we do? There's different ways of doing it. So Will ran this lovely results workshop kind of in Mural, and I've linked it there in that table. And then the secure team kind of broke things out into issues. And so exactly what the process looks like depends on how the teams work, but also like how obvious the findings are. So we might need help kind of parsing those things out, in which case we would make a different approach.
I have a follow-up on like team involvement for the part where you're actually doing the user session. So it says UXR heavy, which makes sense because you're just running the sessions. Do you sometimes invite team members or like PMs, EMs, or even engineers to join them as a way to kind of like build empathy for like how people actually use your product, or not really?
Yes, and usually that's with other stuff. So I am like trained as an experimental psychologist. So part of me is like, no, we can't have any interference. What I tend to do is to broadcast my sessions as like a internal YouTube live stream. And then that way you can see it, but the participant wouldn't like see your facial reactions in any way. And like I have like my go-to like muted facial expressions that
Poker face. Mm-hmm.
Yes. But I think that's the most important. Like there's 2 aspects of that, right? Like the session pilots, it's really helpful to have people there. And then you can even break script in the side channel to be like, oh, try this follow-up question, or, or maybe if we did the task this way, that can be like much more open and collaborative. But after we get that methods fixed, then it's just like a plug and chug, kind of run the participant through.
That makes sense.
You can still watch it to build empathy, yes. I would never say no to that. But we would want to like take precautions to make sure we don't bias them.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Thanks.
Yeah, we also have the recordings that we upload to Dovetail as well, outside of like being able to watch it via live stream if there's any conflicts with time zones and things like that.
That's awesome. Thank you. And this has been really informative. So I really appreciate Will, Erica, for you all coming to talk to us about this today. I was curious, we only have a couple minutes left, but you mentioned the mural results that were shared or linked within the Epic. Would you all mind, just for those who might watch the recording after, just kind of showing those on the screen really quick? Because I think going through this process with the release team, one of the things that the team was really impressed with was just the high quality output that comes out of it, and getting to kind of see some of the results of that. And I know you touched on it a little bit in the slides, but maybe we can just take a look at the mural output there.
Yeah, do you want me to pull that up, Erica?
Yeah, and I think even maybe it's just your report. Is that?
Yeah, let me so here's my research epic. So we have like a couple different things that get generated. We have like the overall research report, some of which we like included screenshots of in our deck that we just walk through, such as something like this. We also do like a video overview of it, but more of the, like, to go back to the original question, we did, like, after creating the presentation, create like a mural board, where I'll kind of zoom out a little bit, where we had some background context that I shared with the team, of here's the overall results, here's like more specific granular results about specific tasks and workflows, like for deliver code changes, here are all the different tasks that are associated with them, and then just having people like review some of the usability themes. So we try to summarize, like, okay, this page didn't meet users' expectations, could you provide some feedback on that? So we had the team go through like that exercise, and then the bulk of it is really just like working with the team to generate like how we might improve the usability overall. So working with the team to get their ideas and thoughts on this, so they come up with solutions, and then we take those sticky notes into another activity where we essentially like talk about them a little bit more, and then essentially vote on which ones we want to work on, and then those turn into the actionable insights. So the ones that were voted highly were these, like 10 or so, or 12 different recommendations. So we had everybody from the release team voting on those and deciding, like, okay, this is what we want to work on collectively. And then there was a KR that was created to like specifically address a good chunk of these throughout the following quarter.
Perfect. Thank you so much for walking us through that. As you can see, there's so much that goes into it, but there's the results are like these really visual, useful workflows that really help us know where to focus to improve our sus scores. So again, Erica, Will, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. We're out of time. If anyone has any follow-up questions, I'm sure Will or Erica will be happy to address those in chat or in Slack. But thanks again for joining us, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Okay, goodbye.
Bye.